Welcome, friends, to the second installment in this calm reading of The Count of Monte Cristo. Today, we will be listening to Chapter 2, Father and Son, as well as Chapter 3, The Catalans. Let us begin. Chapter 2. Father and Son. We will leave Danglars struggling with the demon of hatred, and endeavoring to insinuate in the ear of the shipowner some evil suspicions against his comrade, and follow Dante, who, after having traversed La Canipiere, took the Rue de Noël, and entering a small house on the left of the Allées de Milan, rapidly ascended 4 flights of a dark staircase, holding the baluster with one hand, while with the other he repressed the beatings of his heart, and paused before a half-open door, from which he could see the whole of a small room. This room was occupied by Dante's father. The news of the arrival of the Pharaon had not yet reached the old man, who, mounted on a chair, was amusing himself by training with trembling hand the nasturtiums and sprays of clematis that clambered over the trellis at his window. Suddenly he felt an arm thrown around his body, and a well-known voice behind him exclaimed, "Father, dear father!" The old man uttered a cry and turned around. Then, seeing his son, he fell into his arms, pale and trembling. "What ails you, my dearest father? Are you ill?" inquired the young man, much alarmed. "No, no, my dear Edmund, my boy, my son, no. But I did not expect you, and joy, the surprise of seeing you so suddenly, I feel as if I were going to die. Come, come, cheer up, my dear father. 'Tis I, really I. They say joy never hurts, and so I came to you without any warning. Come now, do smile, instead of looking at me so solemnly. Here, I am back again, and we are going to be happy." "Yes, yes, my boy, so we will," replied the old man. "But how shall we be happy? Shall you never leave me again? Come, tell me all the good fortune that has befallen you." "God forgive me," said the young man, "for rejoicing at happiness derived from the misery of others. But, heaven knows, I did not seek this good fortune. It has happened, and I really cannot pretend to lament it. The good Captain Leclerc is dead, father, and it is probable that, with the aid of Monsieur Morel, I shall have his place. Do you understand, father? Only imagine me a captain at 20, with 100 louis pay and a share in the profits. Is this not more than a poor sailor like me could have hoped for?" "Yes, my dear boy," replied the old man, "it is very fortunate. Well then, with the first money I touch, I mean you to have a small house, with a garden in which to plant clematis, nasturtiums, and honeysuckle. But what ails you, father? Are you not well?" "'Tis nothing, nothing. It will soon pass away." And as he said so, the old man's strength failed him, and he fell backwards. "Come, come," said the young man, "a glass of wine, father, will revive you. Where do you keep your wine?" "No, no, thanks. You need not look for it. I do not want it," said the old man. "Yes, yes, father, tell me where it is." And he opened 2 or 3 cupboards. "It is no use," said the old man. "There is no wine." "What? No wine? Said Dante, turning pale and looking alternately at the hollow cheeks of the old man and the empty cupboards. What? No wine? Have you wanted money, father? I want nothing now that I have you, said the old man. Yet, stammered Dante, wiping the perspiration from his brow. Yet I gave you 200 francs when I left 3 months ago. Yes, Edmund, that is true, but you forgot at the time a little debt to our neighbor Caderousse. He reminded me of it, telling me if I did not pay for you, he would be paid by Monsieur Morel, and so you see, lest he might do you an inquiry. Well, why, I paid him. But, cried Dante, it was 140 francs. I owed Caderousse. Yes, stammered the old man. And you paid him out of the 200 francs I left you. The old man nodded. So that you have lived for 3 months on 60 francs, muttered Edmund. You know how little I require, said the old man. Heaven pardon me, cried Edmund, falling on his knees before his father. What are you doing? You have wounded me to the heart. Never mind it, for I see you once more, said the old man, and now it's all over. Everything is all right again. Yes, here I am, said the young man, with a promising future and a little money. Here, father, here, he said. Take this, take it, and send for something immediately. And he emptied his pockets on the table, the contents consisting of a dozen gold pieces, 5 or 6 5-franc pieces, and some smaller coins. The countenance of old Dante brightened. Whom does this belong to? He inquired. To me, to you, to us. Take it. Buy some provisions, be happy, and tomorrow we shall have more. Gently, gently, said the old man with a smile, and by your leave I will use your purse moderately, for they would say, if they saw me buy too many things at a time, that I had been obliged to await your return, in order to be able to purchase them. Do as you please, but first of all, pray have a servant, father. I will not have you left alone so long. I have some smuggled coffee and most capital tobacco in a small chest in the hold, which you shall have tomorrow. But, hush, here comes somebody. 'Tis Caderousse, who has heard of your arrival, and no doubt comes to congratulate you on your fortunate return. Ah, lips that say one thing while the heart thinks another, murmured Edmund. But never mind, he is a neighbor who has done us a service on a time, so he's welcome. As Edmund paused, the black and bearded head of Caderousse appeared at the door. He was a man of 25 or 6, and held a piece of cloth, which, being a tailor, he was about to make into a coat-lining. What, is it you, Edmund, back again? Said he, with a broad Marseillaise accent, and a grin that displayed his ivory white teeth. Yes, as you see, neighbor Caderousse, and ready to be agreeable to you in any and every way, replied Dante, but ill concealing his coldness under this cloak of civility. Thanks, but fortunately I do not want for anything, and it chances that at times there are others who have need of me. Dante made a gesture. I do not allude to you, my boy, no. I lent you money and you returned it. That's like good neighbors, and we are quits. We are never quits with those who oblige us, was Dante's reply. For when we do not owe them money, we owe them gratitude. what's the use of mentioning that? What is done is done. Let us talk of your happy return, my boy. I had gone on the quay to match a piece of mulberry cloth when I met friend Danglars. You at Marseilles? Yes, says he. I thought you were at Smyrna. I was, but am now back again. And where is the dear boy, our little Edmund? Why, with his father, no doubt, replied Danglars. And so I came, added Caderousse, as fast as I could, to have the pleasure of shaking hands with a friend. Worthy Caderousse, said the old man, he is so much attached to us. Yes, to be sure I am. I love and esteem you, because honest folks are so rare. But it seems you have come back rich, my boy, continued the tailor, looking askance at the handful of gold and silver which Dante had thrown on the table. The young man remarked the greedy glance which shone in the dark eyes of his neighbor. He said negligently, this money is not mine. I was expressing to my father my fears that he had wanted many things in my absence, and to convince me he emptied his purse on the table. Come, father, added Dante, put this money back in your box, unless neighbor Caderousse wants anything, and in that case it is at his service. No, my boy, no, said Caderousse. I am not in any want, thank God. My living is suited to my means. Keep your money. Keep it, I say. One never has too much. But at the same time, my boy, I am as much obliged by your offer as if I took advantage of it. It was offered with good will, said Dante. No doubt, my boy, no doubt. Well, you stand well with Monsieur Morrel, I hear. You insinuating dog, you. Monsieur Morrel has always been exceedingly kind to me, replied Dante. Then you were wrong to refuse to dine with him. What? Did you refuse to dine with him? Said old Dante. And did he invite you to dine? Yes, my dear father, replied Edmund, smiling at his father's astonishment at the excessive honour paid to his son. And why did you refuse, my son? Inquired the old man. That I might the sooner see you again, my dear father, replied the young man. I was most anxious to see you. But it must have vexed Monsieur Morrel, good, worthy man, said Caderousse. And when you are looking forward to be captain, it was wrong to annoy the owner. But I explained to him the cause of my refusal, replied Dante, and I hope he fully understood it. Yes, but to be captain one must do a little flattery to one's patrons. I hope to be captain without that, said Dante. So much the better, so much the better. Nothing will give greater pleasure to all your old friends. And I know one down there behind the St. Nicholas citadel who will not be sorry to hear it. Mercedes, said the old man. Yes, my dear father, and with your permission, now I have seen you, and know you are well, and have all you require, I will ask your consent to go and pay a visit to the Catalans. Go, my dear boy, said old Dante, and heaven bless you in your wife, as it has blessed me in my son. His wife, said Caderousse. Why, how fast you go on, Father Dante. She is not his wife yet, as it seems to me. No, but according to all probability, she soon will be, replied Edmund. Yes, yes, said Caderousse, but you were right to return as soon as possible, my boy. And why? Because Mercedes is a very fine girl, and fine girls never lack followers. She particularly has them by dozens. Really, answered Edmund, with a smile which had in it traces of slight uneasiness. "Ah, yes," continued Caderousse, "and capital office, too, but you know, you will be captain, and who could refuse you then?" "Meaning to say," replied Dante, with a smile which but ill concealed his trouble, "that if I were not a captain—" "Eh," said Caderousse, shaking his head. "Come, come," said the sailor, "I have a better opinion than you of women in general, and of Mercedes in particular, and I am certain that, captain or not, she will remain ever faithful to me." "So much the better, said Caderousse. "When one is going to be married, there is nothing like implicit confidence. But never mind that, my boy. Go and announce your arrival, and let her know all your hopes and prospects." "I will go directly," was Edmund's reply, and, embracing his father and nodding to Caderousse, he left the apartment. Caderousse lingered for a moment. Then, taking leave of old Dante, he went downstairs to rejoin Danglars, who awaited him at the corner of the Rue Senac. "Well," said Danglars, "did you see him?" "I have just left him," answered Caderousse. "Did he allude to his hope of being captain?" "He spoke of it as a thing already decided." "Indeed," said Danglars, "he is in too much hurry, it appears to me." "Why, it seems Monsieur Morrel has promised him the thing, so that he is quite elated about it." "Why, yes, he is actually insolent over the matter, has already offered me his patronage, as if he were a grand personage, and proffered me a loan of money, as though he were a banker." "Which you refused?" "Most assuredly, although I might easily have accepted it, for it was I who put into his hands the first silver he ever earned. But now Monsieur Dante has no longer any occasion for assistance. He is about to become a captain." "Pooh," said Danglars, "he is not one yet." "Ma foi, it will be as well if he is not," answered Caderousse. "For if he should be, there will be really no speaking to him." "If we choose," replied Danglars, "he will remain what he is, and perhaps become even less than he is." "What do you mean?" "Nothing. I was speaking to myself." "And is he still in love with the Catalan?" "Over head and ears. But, unless I am much mistaken, there will be a storm in that quarter." "Explain yourself." "Why should I?" "It is more important than you think, perhaps. You do not like Dante?" "I never like upstarts." "Then tell me all you know about the Catalan." "I know nothing for certain, only I have seen things which induce me to believe, as I told you, that the future captain will find some annoyance in the vicinity of the Villiers infirmaries." "What have you seen? Come, tell me." "Well, every time I have seen Mercedes come into the city, she has been accompanied by a tall, strapping, black-eyed Catalan, with a red complexion, brown skin, and fierce air, whom she calls cousin." "Really? And you think this cousin pays her attentions?" "I only suppose so. What else can a strapping chap of 21 mean with a fine wench of 17? And you say that Dante has gone to the Catalans?" "He went before I came down." "Let us go the same way. We will stop at La Réserve, and we can drink a glass of La Marque whilst we wait for news." "Come along," said Caderousse, "but you pay the score. "Of course," replied Danglars, and, going quickly to the designated place, they called for a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Père Pamphile had seen Dante pass not 10 minutes before, and, assured that he was at the Catalans, they sat down under the building foliage of the planes and sycamores, in the branches of which the birds were singing their welcome to one of the first days of spring. Chapter 3. The Catalans. Beyond a bare, weather-worn wall, about 100 paces from the spot where the 2 friends sat looking and listening as they drank their wine, was the village of the Catalans. Long ago, this mysterious colony quitted Spain and settled on the tongue of land on which it is to this day. Whence it came no one knew, and it spoke an unknown tongue. One of its chiefs, who understood Provençal, begged the commune of Marseille to give them this bare and barren promontory, where, like the sailors of old, they had run their boats ashore. The request was granted, and 3 months afterwards, around the 12 or 15 small vessels which had brought these gypsies of the sea, a small village sprang up. This village, constructed in a singular and picturesque manner, half Moorish, half Spanish, still remains, and is inhabited by descendants of the first comers, who speak the language of their fathers. For 3 or 4 centuries they have remained upon this small promontory, on which they had settled like a flight of seabirds, without mixing with the Marseillaise population, intermarrying, and preserving their original customs and the costume of their mother country, as they have preserved its language. Our readers will follow us along the only street of this little village, and enter with us one of the houses, which is sunburnt to the beautiful dead-leaf color peculiar to the buildings of the country, and within coated with whitewash, like a Spanish posada. A young and beautiful girl, with hair as black as jet, her eyes as velvety as the gazelle's, was leaning with her back against the wainscot, rubbing in her slender, delicately moulded fingers a bunch of heath blossoms, the flowers of which she was picking off and strewing on the floor, her arms bare to the elbow, brown, and modelled after those of the Arlesian Venus, moved with a kind of restless impatience, and she tapped the earth with her arched and subtle foot, so as to display the pure and full shape of a well-turned leg, in its red cotton, grey and blue clocked stocking. At 3 paces from her, seated in a chair which he balanced on 2 legs, leaning his elbow on an old worm-eaten table, was a tall young man of 20, or 22, who was looking at her with an air in which vexation and uneasiness were mingled. He questioned her with his eyes, but the firm and steady gaze of the young girl controlled his look. "You see, Mercedes," said the young man, "here is Easter come round again. Tell me, is this the moment for a wedding?" "I have answered you 100 times, Fernand, and really you must be very stupid to ask me again." "Well, repeat it, I beg of you, that I may at last believe it. Tell me for the 100th time that you refuse my love, which had your mother's sanction. Make me understand once for all that you are trifling with my happiness, that my life or death are nothing to you. Ah, to have dreamed for 10 years of being your husband, Mercedes, and to lose that hope, which was the only stay of my existence. At least it was not I who ever encouraged you in that hope, Fernand, replied Mercedes. You cannot reproach me with the slightest coquetry. I have always said to you, I love you as a brother, but do not ask for me more than sisterly affection, for my heart is another's. Is not this true, Fernand? Yes, that is very true, Mercedes, replied the young man. Yes, you have been cruelly frank with me. But do you forget that it is among the Catalans a secret law to intermarry? You mistake, Fernand. It is not a law, but merely a custom. And I pray of you, do not cite this custom in your favor. Are you included in the conscription, Fernand? And are you only at liberty on sufferance, liable at any moment to be called upon to take up arms? Once a soldier, what would you do with me, a poor orphan, forlorn, without fortune, with nothing but a half-ruined hut and a few ragged nets, the miserable inheritance left by my father to my mother, and by my mother to me? She has been dead a year, and you know, Fernand, I have subsisted almost entirely on public charity. Sometimes you pretend I am useful to you, and that it is an excuse to share with me the produce of your fishing. And I accept it, Fernand, because you are the son of my father's brother, because we were brought up together, and still more, because it would give you so much pain if I refused. But I feel very deeply that this fish which I go and sell, and with the produce of which I buy the flax I spin, I feel very keenly, Fernand, that this is charity. And if it were, Mercedes, poor and lone as you are, you suit me as well as the daughter of the first ship owner or the richest banker of Marseille. What do such as we desire but a good wife and careful housekeeper? And where can I look for these better than in you? Fernand, answered Mercedes, shaking her head. A woman becomes a bad manager, and who shall say she will remain an honest woman when she loves another man better than her husband? Rest content with my friendship, for I say once more, that is all I can promise, and I will promise no more than I can bestow. I understand, replied Fernand. You can endure your own wretchedness patiently, but you are afraid to share mine. Well, Mercedes, beloved by you, I would tempt fortune. You would bring me good luck, and I should become rich. I could extend my occupation as a fisherman, might get a place as clerk in a warehouse, and become in time a dealer myself. You could do no such thing, Fernand. You are a soldier, and if you remain at the Catalans, it is because there is no war. So, remain a fisherman, and content with my friendship, as I cannot give you more. Well, I will do better, Mercedes. I will be a sailor, instead of the costume of our fathers, which you despise. I will wear a varnished hat, a striped shirt, and a blue jacket, with an anchor on the bottoms. Would not that dress please you? What do you mean? Asked Mercedes, with an angry glance. What do you mean? I do not understand you. I mean, Mercedes, that you are thus harsh and cruel with me, because you are expecting someone who is thus attired. But perhaps he whom you await is inconstant, or if he is not, the sea is so to him. Fernand, cried Mercedes, I believe you were good-hearted, and I was mistaken. Fernand, you are wicked to call your aid jealousy, and the anger of God. Yes, I will not deny it. I do await, and I do love him, of whom you speak. And if he does not return, instead of accusing him of inconstancy which you insinuate, I will tell you that he died loving me, and me only." The young girl made a gesture of rage. "I understand you, Fernand. You would be revenged on him because I do not love you. You would cross your Catalan knife with his dirk. What end would that answer? To lose you my friendship, if he were conquered, and see that friendship changed into hate, if you were victor. Believe me, to seek a quarrel with a man is a bad method of pleasing the woman who loves that man. No, Fernand, you will not thus give way to evil thoughts. Unable to have me for your wife, you will content yourself with having me for your friend and sister. And besides," she added, her eyes troubled and moistened with tears, "Wait, Fernand. You said just now that the sea was treacherous, and he has been gone 4 months. And during these 4 months there have been some terrible storms." Fernand made no reply, nor did he attempt to check the tears which flowed down the cheeks of Mercedes, although for each of these tears he would have shed his heart's blood. But these tears flowed for another. He arose, paced a while up and down the hut, and then, suddenly stopping before Mercedes, with his eyes glowing and his hands clenched, "Say, Mercedes," he said, "once for all, is this your final determination?" "I love Edmond Dantès," the young girl calmly replied, "and none but Edmond shall ever be my husband." "And you will always love him?" "As long as I live." Fernand let fall his head like a defeated man, heaved a sigh that was like a groan, and then suddenly, looking her full in the face, with clenched teeth and expanded nostrils, said, "But if he is dead?" "If he is dead, I shall die too." "If he has forgotten you?" "Mercedes!" called a joyous voice from without. "Mercedes!" "Ah!" exclaimed the young girl, blushing with delight, and fairly leaping in excess of love. "You see, he has not forgotten me, for here he is." And rushing towards the door, she opened it, saying, "Here, Edmond, here I am." Fernand, pale and trembling, drew back, like a traveller at the sight of a serpent, and fell into a chair beside him. Edmond and Mercedes were clasped in each other's arms. The burning Marseille sun, which shot into the room through the opened door, covered them with a flood of light. At first they saw nothing around them. Their intense happiness isolated them from all the rest of the world, and they only spoke in broken words, which are the tokens of a joy so extreme that they seem rather the expression of sorrow. Suddenly Edmund saw the gloomy, pale, and threatening countenance of Fernand, as it was defined in the shadow. By a movement for which he could scarcely account to himself, the young Catalan placed his hand on the knife at his belt. "Ah, your pardon," said Dante, frowning in his turn. "I did not perceive that there were 3 of us." Then, turning to Mercedes, he inquired, "Who is this gentleman?" "One who will be your best friend, Dante, for he is my friend, my cousin, my brother. It is Fernand, the man whom, after you, Edmund, I love the best in the world. Do you not remember him?" "Yes," said Dante, and, without relinquishing Mercedes's hand, clasped in one of his own, he extended the other to the Catalan with a cordial air. But Fernand, instead of responding to this amiable gesture, remained mute and trembling. Edmund then cast his eyes scrutinizingly at the agitated and embarrassed Mercedes, and then again on the gloomy and menacing Fernand. This look told him all, and his anger waxed hot. "I did not know, when I came with such haste to you, that I was to meet an enemy here." "An enemy?" cried Mercedes, with an angry look at her cousin. "An enemy in my house, do you say, Edmund? If I believed that, I would place my arm under yours and go with you to Marseille, leaving the house to return to it no more." Fernand's eye darted lightning. "And should any misfortune occur to you, dear Edmund," she continued with the same calmness which proved to Fernand that the young girl had read the very innermost depths of his sinister thought, "if misfortune should occur to you, I would ascend the highest point of the Cape de Morgue and cast myself headlong from it." Fernand became deadly pale. "But you are deceived, Edmund," she continued. "You have no enemy here. There is no one but Fernand, my brother, who will grasp your hand as a devoted friend." And at these words, the young girl fixed her imperious look on the Catalan, who, as if fascinated by it, came slowly towards Edmund, and offered him his hand. His hatred, like a powerless though furious wave, was broken against the strong ascendancy which Mercedes exercised over him. Scarcely, however, had he touched Edmund's hand when he felt he had done all he could do, and rushed hastily out of the house. "Oh!" he exclaimed, running furiously and tearing his hair. "Oh, who will deliver me from this man? Wretched, wretched that I am." "Hello, Catalan! Hello, Fernand! Where are you running to?" exclaimed the voice. The young man stopped suddenly, looked around him, and perceived Caderousse sitting at the table with Danglars, under an arbor. "Well," said Caderousse, "why don't you come? Are you really in such a hurry that you have no time to pass the time of day with your friends? Particularly when they have still a full bottle before them," added Danglars. Fernand looked at them both with a stupefied air, but did not say a word. "He seems besotted," said Danglars, pushing Caderousse with his knee. "Are we mistaken, and is Dante triumphant in spite of all we have believed?" "Why, we must inquire into that," was Caderousse's reply. And, turning towards the young man, said, "Well, Catalan, can't you make up your mind?" Fernand wiped away his perspiration steaming from his brow, and slowly entered the arbor, whose shade seemed to restore somewhat of calmness to his senses, and whose coolness somewhat of refreshment to his exhausted body. "Good day," he said. "You called me, didn't you?" And he fell, rather than sat down, on one of the seats which surrounded the table. "I called you because you were running like a madman, and I was afraid you would throw yourself into the sea," said Caderousse, laughing. "Why, when a man has friends, they are not only to offer him a glass of wine, but, moreover, to prevent his swallowing 3 or 4 pints of water unnecessarily." Fernand gave a groan, which resembled a sob, and dropped his head into his hands, his elbows leaning on the table. "Well, Fernand, I must say," said Caderousse, beginning the conversation with that brutality of the common people in which curiosity destroys all diplomacy. You look uncommonly like a rejected lover. And he burst into a hoarse laugh. Ah, said Danglars, a lad of his make was not born to be unhappy in love. You're laughing at him, Caderousse. No, he replied, only hark how he sighs. Come, come, Fernand, said Caderousse, hold up your head and answer us. It's not polite not to reply to friends who ask news of your health. My health is well enough, said Fernand, clenching his hands without raising his head. Ah, you see, Danglars, said Caderousse, winking at his friend. This is how it is. Fernand, whom you see here, is a good and brave Catalan, one of the best fishermen in Marseille, and he is in love with a very fine girl named Mercedes. But it appears, unfortunately, that the fine girl is in love with the mate of the Pharaon, and as the Pharaon arrived today, why, you understand. No, I do not understand, said Danglars. Poor Fernand has been dismissed, continued Caderousse. Well, and what then? Said Fernand, lifting up his head and looking at Caderousse like a man who looks for someone on whom to vent his anger. Mercedes is not accountable to any person, is she? Is she not free to love whomever she will? Oh, if you take it in that sense, said Caderousse, it is another thing. But I thought you were a Catalan, and they told me that the Catalans were not men to allow themselves to be supplanted by a rival. It was even told me that Fernand, especially, was terrible in his vengeance. Fernand smiled piteously. A lover is never terrible, he said. Poor fellow, remarked Danglars, affecting to pity the young man from the bottom of his heart. Why, you see, he did not expect to see Dante returning so suddenly. He thought he was dead, perhaps, or perchance faithless. These things always come on us more severely when they come suddenly. Ah, ma foi, under any circumstances, said Caderousse, who drank as he spoke, and on whom the fumes of the wine began to take effect. Under any circumstances, Fernand is not the only person put out by the fortunate arrival of Dante. Is he, Danglars? No, you are right, and I should say that would bring him ill luck. Well, never mind, answered Caderousse, pouring out a glass of wine for Fernand, and filling his own for the 8th or 9th time, while Danglars had merely sipped his. Never mind, in the meantime he marries Mercedes, the lovely Mercedes. At least he returns to do that. During this time, Danglars fixed his piercing glance on the young man, on whose heart Caderousse's words fell like molten lead. "And when is the wedding to be?" he asked. "Oh, it is not yet fixed," murmured Fernand. "No, but it will be," said Caderousse, "as surely as Dante will be captain of the Pharaon. Eh, Danglars?" Danglars shuddered at this unexpected attack, and turned to Caderousse, whose countenance he scrutinized, to try and detect whether the blow was premeditated. But he read nothing but envy in a countenance already rendered brutal and stupid by drunkenness. "Well," said he, filling the glass, "let us drink to Captain Edmond Dantès, husband of the beautiful Catalan." Caderousse raised his glass to his mouth with unsteady hand, and swallowed the contents at a gulp. Fernand dashed his on the ground. Eh, stammered Caderousse. "What do I see down there by the wall, in the direction of the Catalans? Look, Fernand, your eyes are better than mine." I believe I see double. You know wine is a deceiver, but I should say it was two lovers walking side by side, and hand in hand. Heaven forgive me, they do not know that we can see them, and they are actually embracing. Danglars did not lose one pang that Fernand endured. "Do you know them, Fernand?" he said. "Yes," he replied in a low voice. "It is Edmond and Mercedes." "Ah, see there now," said Caderousse, "and I did not recognize them. Hello, Dante. Hello, lovely damsel. Come this way, and let us know when the wedding is to be. For Fernand here is so obstinate he will not tell us." "Hold your tongue, will you?" said Danglars, pretending to restrain Caderousse, who, with the tenacity of drunkards, leaned out of the arbor. "Try to stand upright, and let the lovers make love without interruption. See, look at Fernand, and follow his example. He is well behaved." Fernand, probably excited beyond bearing, pricked by Danglars, as the bull is by the bandolieros, was about to rush out, for he had risen from his seat, and seemed to be collecting himself to dash headlong upon his rival, when Mercedes, smiling and graceful, lifted up her lovely head, and looked at them with her clear and bright eyes. At this, Fernand recollected her threat of dying if Edmond died, and dropped again heavily on his seat. Danglars looked at the two men, one after the other, the one brutalized by liquor, the other overwhelmed with love. "I shall get nothing from these fools," he muttered, "and I am very much afraid of being here between a drunkard and a coward. He is an envious fellow, making himself boozy on wine, when he ought to be nursing his wrath. And here is a fool who sees a woman he loves stolen from under his nose, and takes on like a big baby. Yet this Catalan has eyes that glisten like those of the vengeful Spaniards, Sicilians, and Calabrians, and the other has fists big enough to crush an ox at one blow. Unquestionably, Edmund's star is in the ascendant, and we will marry the splendid girl. He will be captain too, and laugh at us all, unless—" A sinister smile passed over Danglars' lips. "Unless I take a hand in the affair," he added. "Hallo!" continued Caderousse, half rising, and with his fist on the table. "Hallo, Edmund, do you not see your friends, or are you too proud to speak to them?" "No, my dear fellow," replied Dante. "I am not proud, but I am happy, and happiness blinds, I think, more than pride." "Ah, very well, that's an explanation," said Caderousse. "How do you do, Madame Dante?" Mercedes curtsied gravely, and said, "That is not my name, and in my country it bodes ill fortune, they say, to call a young girl by the name of her betrothed before he becomes her husband. So call me Mercedes, if you please." "We must excuse our worthy neighbor, Caderousse," said Dante. "He is so easily mistaken." "So then the wedding is to take place immediately, Monsieur Dante," said Danglars, bowing to the young couple. "As soon as possible, Monsieur Danglars. Today all preliminaries will be arranged at my father's, and tomorrow, or next day at latest, the wedding festival here at La Réserve. My friends will be there, I hope. That is to say, you are invited, Monsieur Danglars, and you, Caderousse." "And Fernand?" said Caderousse with a chuckle. "Fernand, too, is invited." "My wife's brother is my brother," said Edmund, "and we, Mercedes and I, should be very sorry if he were absent at such a time." Fernand opened his mouth to reply, but his voice died on his lips, and he could not utter a word. Today the preliminaries, tomorrow and next day the ceremony. You are in a hurry, Captain. Danglars, said Edmund, smiling, I will say to you, as Mercédès said just now to Caderousse, do not give me a title which does not belong to me. That may bring me bad luck. Your pardon, replied Danglars. I merely said you seemed in a hurry, and we have lots of time. The Pharaon cannot be under way again in less than 3 months. We are always in a hurry to be happy, Monsieur Danglars, for when we have suffered a long time, we have great difficulty in believing in good fortune. But it is not selfishness alone that makes me thus in haste. I must go to Paris. Ah, really? To Paris? And will it be the first time you have ever been there, Dante? Yes. Have you business there? Not of my own. The last commission of poor Captain Leclerc. You know to what I allude, Danglars. It is sacred. Besides, I shall only take the time to go and return. Yes, I understand, said Danglars, and then, in a low tone, he added, to Paris, no doubt to deliver the letter which the Grand Marshal gave him. Ah, this letter gives me an idea, a capital idea. Ah, Dante, my friend, you are not yet registered number 1 on board the good ship Pharaon. Then, turning towards Edmund, who was walking away, a pleasant journey, he cried. Thank you, said Edmund with a friendly nod, and the two lovers continued on their way, as calm and joyous as if they were the very elect of heaven.